All right, good morning. How you doing, Cameron?
Man, I'm great. I've got some of that good coffee.
Some of that thick mud. Yeah, right before I came down the stairs with my fresh hot cup of coffee to start doing this show, I normally don't eat while we're on the air, but my wife gave me these chocolate cookie fudge filled rollers. I'm shamelessly going to snack on these with this coffee because, just damn. So what are you talking about, brother?
Well, turns out Sidney Powell's got a giant beach ball size set of lady nuts on her. Also, I heard this gets on Lindsay's nerves.
Yeah, it aggravates the shit out of me too.
Well, I promise once I have my setup back, I'll actually be able to mute it like I used to. Because if you'll recall, I used to mute it before I would puff.
That's fair. So yeah,
I guess I still can.
Sidney Powell of Save Michael Flynn fame has decided to lay her career out and buddy, she's firing with both barrels. Now, Cameron and I, obviously we talk about this. We have a good long conversation every morning before the show to do show prep and talk about what we're going to talk about, which is a whole level of ontology that the average brain just isn't ready for. Philosophy is the science of thinking about thinking. Anyway, I said initially, I don't even want to talk about this yet because there's so much that's potentially going to drop in the next couple of days that I don't want to get out over my skis on it. And everything that we're going to say for the rest of this show is either going to be a direct reference to the interviews that Sidney Powell has already done on these topics, or if it's not a direct reference to that, then it is speculation and analytic expectation purely. We don't have additional facts to allege. We don't have additional evidence to present. But given the facts on the ground, there is great value to be had from analytic speculation. Now, and I say that advisedly, analytic speculation, taking what we know and extrapolating what we can from that. Like, for example, that I think Governor Whitmer is going to jail.
Maybe. Though still, man, I don't know. For some reason, Democrats don't normally go to jail. Like, it's, especially if they're connected, it's really very rare.
Yeah, and now there's a whole other conversation we need to have. What is it going to take to start serving justice to the enemy?
Double O Buck?
Yep.
Okay, so just to sum it up, in case you're one of like the two people in the world that don't understand, Sidney Powell is a lawyer, and that's surprisingly distracting. Anyhow, okay, so Sidney Powell is a lawyer who's had a career, buddy, been involved with documentaries, high-profile cases, and most notably, recently, she's actually the lawyer that got Michael Flynn sussed out. Thanks, buddy. And when I say sussed out, like Michael Flynn had hit the end of his rope. He'd basically decided to plead guilty strategically, because when somebody brings that scorched earth lawfare against you, it's not that we don't have the opportunity to continue to fight and fight and fight and fight all we want, but it's often a matter of how much justice does a man get? Well, how much justice can a man afford?
Yeah, and
if you can,
the lefty media kept kept pointing out, why is Flynn withdrawing his guilty plea? He pled guilty to the crime. He pled guilty to the crime. Okay. He pled guilty to a process crime, lying to the FBI, after the FBI said they were certain he wasn't lying. And even then, only after the lawfare against him had bankrupted him, forced him to sell his home, and then, after all that, being threatened by the same lawfare agents to do the same thing to his son. They basically went scorched earth, ruined him until he could be ruined no more, and then threatened to bring the same ruination using false allegations, spurious charges, and essentially weaponized bankruptcy against Flynn's son. And at that point, he finally said, I have no choice but to martyr myself for my progeny.
So, yeah, that's Sidney Powell, who came in and said, no, night, bye, Felicia. And it's why Michael Flynn's actually going to get some measure of his life back. Now, can he get the last few years back? No. Can he go back and be a part of the Trump administration? No. Can he get all that money back? I'm going to say no, but there's a possibility that original law firm could get sued into the dirt. But
yes.
But suing a law firm, good luck with that, because they're all lawyers. So what's Sidney Powell?
Yeah, but he's got Sidney Powell in his corner now, so he might just be able to skin Covington and Burling and say, oh no. Yeah, because I don't want to speak too far out of turn, but the numbers on this suggest that Covington and Burling were basically working for the prosecution, while they were basically doing work. They were working against the interests of their client, which isn't just bad practice. That's a crime.
Yes, and there's a reason why so many of those types of positions, like being a doctor, being a lawyer, being an insurance agent, whatever, there's a reason why your conflict of interest has to be absolutely unassailable. So what Sidney Powell is alleging is that she has hundreds of affidavits, and specifically one of the things that she's going after is the Dominion voting system itself. In a nutshell, it was developed so that crooked South American socialist dictators could keep having elections and keep getting elected. And then somehow that system made its way here to the good old US of A. And there is just all of this weird shit that happens because apparently you go vote in a Dominion system, it doesn't tally the votes and spit them out right there on the spot. It doesn't even send them to a central agency in your county or state. It sends them overseas to servers in Europe. And then the servers in Europe send them back here, which, I mean, good Lord, talk about reaching around your ass just to wipe your nose. And she is stating unequivocally that at a minimum, they're going to get Pennsylvania overturned. And it's going to be because of the obvious fraud. Basically, she's daring people to fight her on this. Go ahead. Push this to the Supreme Court. I double, triple, dog dare you to push it that far. And the reason why this is important, Sidney Powell has impeccable credentials. And this is a hell of a thing for her to allege. And one of the things that Half Asian Bill pointed out on Crowder Stream yesterday about this is just the stuff she can talk about. There's more that she can't talk about yet. And, ooh, buddy, if even a tenth of what she says is true, then frankly, it's time for the it's time for the state legislatures to step in. Uh, hate to break it to you, kids, but there's this thing in the Constitution when it says if your election just goes absolutely belly up, well, we're a representative democracy, and your state legislators can step in and basically vote however they want to vote. That's right, kids. Joe Biden could win Georgia, but Georgia could still give its 16 votes to Donald Trump. That's a thing.
And well, that's not exactly how it works. So basically, if the election itself is discounted and it goes to the House to committee, there are 50 states, each of which have a varying number of representatives in the House. But when we get to the committee vote for the president in the House, each state gets one vote. And if your math is good, that's 37 Republicans out of 50 states.
Now, part of what Chris and I were discussing before we came on the air, and this is important, Sidney Powell could be wrong. Hell, Sidney Powell could be lying. This could be the last gasp. You know, she's had a hell of a career, and she doesn't care if things go belly up for her now because she's rich and she's argued some amazingly high-profile cases and won. But I tend to disagree with that. I think she's been the person that she is for her entire life. And at this point, her legacy is important to her. And doing something so foolish that would basically infuriate Republicans and Democrats alike. Because if it turns out that this is a lie, man, everybody's going to be furious with her. The other reason I really discount that is the fact that she has hundreds of affidavits. You get 1, 2, even a dozen or so. Sure, you can find some people to lie, even at the risk of being convicted of a felony. Sure. But hundreds?
Yeah.
That's, you know, and it's hard for me to believe. It really is. Logically, I understand this is not how any of this is supposed to work. This shouldn't work. This is just all too far-fetched. But, I mean, ever since the Donald came down the escalator, everything that was ever too far-fetched has happened. So, what's one more thing?
Yeah. And, okay, so I've got the Wikipedia entry on Sidney Powell pulled up here. And I'm going to read what is written on Wikipedia about this series of cases. In November 2020, Powell joined President Donald Trump's legal team challenging the legality of the November presidential election results. Throughout November 4 through 8, the Trump campaign filed lawsuits in several states over alleged vote harvesting, illegal votes, machine errors, vote dumps, and late counted votes. Okay, before I go any further, we keep hearing the mainstream media guys say, Trump claims without evidence. That statement is false.
Yeah, there's literally evidence. It's why he's claiming it.
Now, an affidavit, for example, is not proof positive. It's not guaranteed proved argument, right? An affidavit alone does not prove the claim made by a case. But to say that an affidavit is not evidence, let alone hundreds of them, is a bald-faced lie. Even if the affidavit itself is false and the person who swore that affidavit is eventually going to be found out to have lied on an affidavit, which is punishable by penalty of perjury, even if that's the case and it turns out that the affidavit was completely false, that affidavit is still evidence.
Yes. And
so every time you hear somebody say Trump claims without evidence, that is a lie. It's not a mistake. It's not an oversight. It is an intentional fabrication for the explicit purpose of relaying false information and distorting the clear facts of the matter. And the clear facts of the matter are that whether or not any impropriety, fraud, criminal activity, or inadvertent miscounting of votes, whether or not anything went wrong in this election, the fact of the matter is that there is evidence that things went wrong.
Well, and we know about the 6,000 votes that basically flipped a county in, what was it, Michigan, Wisconsin? One of the states Donald Trump won last time. Michigan, yes. One of the states Donald Trump won last time, we know for a fact somehow had a mysterious 6,000 vote error. And you think,
and that was related to the Dominion voting systems, and that was in only one county. And if I've got a lot of numbers swimming around up here now, but if memory serves, I think it was the 37 other counties in that state alone used the Dominion voting systems. Which, by the way, so do several of the counties in Georgia, including the most controversial of the flipped vote counties, like Fulton. And go ahead. What else were you going to say before I keep reading?
No, I was just going to say that evidence in and of itself is not a conviction, right? You know, your fingerprints could be on the murder weapon, but that does not make you a murderer. But that's still evidence. And when they say there's no evidence, it's the same thing. It's like, well, your fingerprints are on the murder weapon, but there's no evidence that says you might have committed murder. Well, hold up, swolled up. That's evidence. Still got to take it in front of a judge. You still got to argue your case, okay? Because you know there's nothing that is a fact in law until a judge agrees that it is a fact in law. Fair enough, but piss off with the no evidence thing. There's plenty of evidence. And look, as far as this Dominion stuff goes, it's not even controversial that these systems are squirrely. One of the things that Sidney Powell talks about at length is that Texas, their Secretary of State rejected using these machines because there's just funny things about them and he'd rather not fuss with it. And then, even though Texas is supposed to be trending blue, still went red this time around. But Georgia, the purple state, decided, hey, we'll use some of this Dominion stuff. And then we flipped. That's a little weird. And look, as Crowder and others have pointed out, and including Sidney Powell herself, up until this election cycle, there were Democrats that questioned these voting systems.
Oh, specifically Amy Klobuchar and Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren.
That's right.
There were several other Democrats, but those two names in particular who ran against Joe Biden in the Democrat primary. You know, along with the other 137,000 Democrats on the stage.
Liar-Watha. And even PBS did a story on this. Like,
hey, you know what the difference? You know what the difference was between the Democrat presidential primary and Hunter Biden's laptop contact list?
Please enlighten me.
Tulsi Gabbard. Yep.
That's pretty good, man.
Shouldn't even be funny. It's just a factual statement.
Oh, good Lord. How much crow does she get to eat if all this falls apart? And then she says, and she gets to say, you guys should have nominated me. I was the clean one. I was the likable one. Whoops.
And we will again remind her, we're sorry, Tulsi. You're too hot to be the president. You should run against Mazie Hirono.
You need to sit down and shut up.
Dear sweet Jesus, run Tulsi against Mazie Hirono. Mazie Hirono is dumb as a pile of rocks. I have been to Hawaii. And while I was in Hawaii, I ate fruits that fell off of trees, which were smarter than Mazie Hirono.
Anyhow, but I was trying to wrap up a couple of points there. You were going to get to something, sir.
Okay, so, and again, this is Wikipedia that I'm reading from. Um, and I suspect that's too small a print on your phones to be able to read it with me. So I'm just gonna pop back over to the big heads mode. So, where was I? Days before the 2020 presidential election, Dennis Montgomery. We're not going to get into him too much for this show, but we might talk about him later. And remember, like I said, this is Wikipedia. This is supposed to be encyclopedic recording of the facts, right? A software designer with a history of making dubious claims. Oh, really? Asserted that a government supercomputer program would be used to switch votes from Trump to Biden on voting machines. That's not an unfounded or unevidenced assertion. Like we said, we have at least one case in Michigan where it is 100% confirmed. Now, it's argued, okay? It is argued by Dominion where the problem occurred. It's somebody forgot to update the system, or somebody wrote down a number wrong, or this or that. But what is not in debate is that Dominion software was used in an election where 6,000 votes were flipped from Trump to Biden. And they were flipped at the same time during the period that 4 to 5 o'clock in the morning, that Wednesday morning period, when everybody said, well, okay, look, Trump's winning this thing in a landslide. Trump's clearly about to walk away with 310 electoral college votes. So we're going to stop counting. And then for 1 hour, from 4 to 5 o'clock, every state in the union just suddenly found an extra couple of 100,000 votes for Biden. That last statement is hyperbole. Barely. That's barely hyperbole.
And besides, why is it even possible for the votes to be switched? I mean, that should be like job one of vote tabulation software. Like, you can't switch the votes after the fact. That should be impossible. So don't give me this glitch in the system. Glitches are what happen when you spill coffee on your keyboard. This is a programming thing. And please believe computers don't do a damn thing they're not programmed to do.
So, and again, this Wikipedia article, this is the Wikipedia article on Sidney Powell, right? This has her legal career, notable cases, writing career, film and media career. All that stuff is here. And so after that sentence that I just read about the software designer with a history of making dubious claims asserted the government supercomputer program will be used to switch votes from Trump to Biden on voting machines. Powell promoted the false theory on Lou Dobbs' Fox Business program 2 days after the election, and again 2 days later on Maria Bartiromo's program, claiming to have evidence that is exactly what happened. Okay. Back up a second. The claim by Dennis Montgomery that talks about a government supercomputer program which would switch votes from Trump to Biden. I think I'm not sure about this, but I think what Montgomery was talking about was the hammer and scorecard theory, which we have not talked about on this show because, frankly, I have not seen enough information and evidence on that to speak to it intelligently. Whether or not it's a real thing or a bizarre conspiracy theory, I don't know.
But if you like interesting conspiracy theories, go down that rabbit hole.
Well, and I intend to. That's going to be one where I write my little list. My name is Christopher Lowry. I believe X, Y, and Z. I live at this place. And I'm just going to, just go ahead and let myself cut straight off into Cartesian hyperbolic doubt. But have my my own scorecard that resets my reality. And like, no, come back. The universe is not a manifestation of your mind controlled by an external demon, which is somehow located externally from the mind, in which the entirety of reality is actually constructed. No. That would be putting Descartes before the horse. But Powell, it says here that Powell promoted the false theory on Lou Dobbs' program, and again on Maria Bartiromo's program, claiming to have evidence that that is exactly what happened. Powell said nothing about hammer and scorecard. That's not what happened. This pair of sentences together tell a lie. Powell is saying that the Dominion's voting systems in particular are incredibly vulnerable to tampering and fraud, have a history of either fraud and or computer error and glitches. And the allegation is that part of the allegation, and I haven't seen the evidence to support this yet, but one of the allegations is being made is that these systems were originally designed to be used for the purpose of rigging Venezuelan elections.
Yep.
Does that surprise anyone? And it's way the hell outside of the realm of reasonable doubt.
Yeah, honestly, to a certain extent, I wish that it was easy to doubt. I wish that it was easy to say, well, gosh, it really sucks, but man, it just looks like Joe Biden won. Because the alternative to that is, I mean, a full-blown constitutional crisis. And we're now in a position where no matter what happens here, half the country won't believe it.
Correct.
Of course, if this Dominion software, I mean, because what are we up to now? Like 150 million votes cast?
Yes.
Well, okay.
I think we're up to close to 170. And real quick, Lindsay asked the question, why are those damn machines even legal to have here if they're so prone to be manipulated? That's not just a very good question, Lindsay. Sidney Powell has suggested that not only will the outcome of this investigation and this legal action be that Donald Trump wins the presidency in essentially a landslide once all of it's sorted out, but from what she's suggesting, there are a lot of people, to include governors and mayors, who are going to be facing criminal prosecution for the use of these systems. She's even gone so far as to I'd say threaten some of the states in question. If you certify your elections, don't you dare certify your elections, because if you certify these elections before this process is completed, you will be complicit in the fraud when it's proved. If you certify these elections, which we expect have been conducted fraudulently, then you will have committed yourself to the fraud. You will have become an accessory or something of the sort. Now, let me move forward a little bit. We have the last sentence in this that I wanted to get to. Christopher Krebs, a former Microsoft executive. I'm just going to read the sentence straight to the end. Christopher Krebs, a former Microsoft executive and director of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, characterized the supercomputer claim as nonsense and a hoax, and the agency described the 2020 election as the most secure in American history, with no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. So, let me back up to this clause here. He characterized the supercomputer claim as nonsense and a hoax. That phrase, that clause, has no business being on this page, because again, the claims that Sidney Powell is making do not have to do with the supercomputer claims that are associated with Dennis Montgomery. Those are separate claims, right?
Yeah, this is lying by telling the truth.
So sure, you can characterize those claims as nonsense and a hoax, but I would go on to say that this Christopher Krebs cat, he's describing this guy that says that those claims are nonsense and a hoax, is saying that the 2020 election, okay, in fairness, his agency released the statement, the 2020 election is the most secure in American history, with no evidence that any voting system deleted or lost votes, changed votes, or was in any way compromised. Those two statements, most secure in American history, and no votes were deleted, lost, changed, or in any way compromised, we know those two statements at the national level to be patently and demonstrably false statements. In an election year where we had Republican observers explicitly prohibited from entry within compliance of the law to legally observe the vote counting. We had Bristol boards being hung up to prevent the public from observing vote counting where it should have had access to view. Like I was a count observer last Friday, and where we were doing it was in a gymnasium with the big bleachers that the public was more than welcome to come and sit in and watch from. Right? Nobody did. The bleachers stayed empty all day, but we're in a small county, and frankly, the interest just wasn't there. It's also true that the county I'm in is basically 70-30 for the Democrats, so we weren't expecting a lot of shenanigans to be there. I mean, if the Democrats
they could just win it.
Yeah, they could just win it. They don't have to cheat it. Why do you cheat when you can win? They're going to cheat in places that they're not going to win.
By the way, if you lose me, it's because my phone just gave me low battery warning.
Understood. But yeah,
you know what's really fascinating? Go back to how she describes this as Donald Trump winning in a landslide. Part of what she is alleging, and part of this is through implication, and part of this is through direct statement, that basically the silent Trump voter was such a real phenomena that it's part of why they had to stop the count in the middle of the night. They thought they already had the fix in, and so many millions more people came out and voted for Donald Trump. They said, holy shit. Because one of the things that Rush Limbaugh has talked about a lot on his show is, people will say, well, what can I do? What can I do? If there's fraud, what can I do? And Rush has always said, go vote in person. Because if enough of us go vote in person, it's nearly impossible for them to overwhelm us with their cheating. And I think enough of us went and voted in person. I mean, good grief. Like, even with the funny math, Donald Trump got 10 million more votes than he got in 2016.
Yeah, and we've said this on this show before, but it bears repeating. You want me to believe that Joe Biden got more votes than Barack Obama
or Donald Trump? I mean, the plagiarist, the guy that's tried to run for president multiple times, and the only reason he even got the nomination is because Pete Buttigieg and Elizabeth Warren got out of the way. But he won this election. Sure. Why don't you pull the other one, kid? It's got bells on it, I swear.
Yeah. So, and like we said at the outset of this episode, we don't have any new evidence to support to present, but we have high expectations.
Yeah, because if even half of what she's saying pans out in court, like, holy shit. Like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, subsequent appearance on Bartiromo's program, Powell asserted, I'm reading directly from the Wikipedia article now. Powell asserted that voting machines made by Dominion Voting were designed to rig elections, as far as I understand it, we know that to be true. We actually know that to be like that's not a conspiracy assumption. That's a mere matter of fact. That family members of government officials were paid kickbacks in those states purchasing Dominion products, and linked the situation to the CIA, stating that Director Gina Haspel should be fired immediately.
I mean, again, I go back to, well, why is it even possible for the votes to be changed? Why include that in the code for the software unless you intended for votes to be able to be changed? But what do I know? I'm just one of those dumb plebes that doesn't understand climate change or social justice, and I'm just so full of animosity and hatred. Donald Trump blew his magic dog whistle, and I couldn't help but go vote for him. What do I know?
Yeah. Real quick, Alex McDonald is in the chat now, and he's chatting back and forth with some of our ladies who just can't get enough of his sexy foreign accent. Alex went to the recount in Rockdale as a member of the press, and they tried to have him arrested and removed by the sheriff, and that didn't work out for him. One of the things that I was talking to some people over there about, it struck me as absolutely just unimaginable that there wasn't a camera on every single table. Right? I mean, not hard. Yes, Steve, the ladies. You're interacting and engaging with Alex, but I didn't suggest that you have a particular interest in his sexy foreign accent. If you would like to rebut that distinction, feel free.
Yeah, no, I mean, GoPros ain't that expensive. It wouldn't be that hard.
I mean, you can buy them by the cargo, refurbished for less than $100 a piece, and then you mount a freaking GoPro on every voting station. It's a nice wide-angle lens. You can see the whole table, and you record the count straight through. And that footage gets retained for a period similar to the period over which the votes are retained, and there you go. That footage can be reviewed ad nauseum.
Yeah, we can insist that every cop in the country wears a body camera because the 1% of shitty police officers act like shitty police officers. But we can't insist that all vote counts have a similar measure in place because of that 1%. No. It's everything about this stinks. God, I hope she's right. I hope she's right because I hope she's right. But I also hope she's right because, good Lord, the Schadenfreude, I mean, the salt will flow. It'll be amazing to watch. We'll have to hear about how evil Amy Coney Barrett is for the rest of our life, and that Trump installed her on the Supreme Court in order to steal the election. But it'll be worth it.
Yeah. Well, that's about all I've got for this morning. That's about all I've got. You got anything you want to add before we call it a day there, Cameroon?
No, Alex and Danny were talking about this last night on Polytech. I caught a good bit of their stream, and it's pretty obvious to all of us now that something's funny. Now, the degree to which you believe something is funny, I mean, that's open for interpretation. But, I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. And there's a hell of a lot of smoke. And, yeah, I think that's all I got. But,
hey, and I want to make a quick apology to my Facebook viewers. I've neglected you terribly. I apologize. Jamie and Angie are watching on on Facebook, and I'm so used. I apologize. We're just getting used to the dual streaming thing. We're streaming to YouTube and Facebook simultaneously right now. So Angie's asking, what say you about the seized results from a server in Germany? I don't, because I don't know much about that yet. I've heard some quick whispers, but I haven't gotten to study it yet. So I'll have to get back to you on that. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of smoke, and where there's smoke, you will likely find the brush fire. Y'all be safe out there, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. There's a button I'm supposed to push. There it is.